Welcome into the Frogs Today post-game show. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Bingo Merriex following a thrilling 75-73 TCU Horned Frogs victory over the Texas Longhorns. We're going to talk about this game, break it down quite a bit, but Bingo, I want to start with a couple of facts, all right? First fact is that this is the fourth time now under Jamie Dixon that TCU has reached the 20-win mark. They're 20-10 on the year. This is the third time in Mike Miles' career where he's finished a game and hasn't scored a basket. If someone had told you before the game Mike Miles was going to finish with 1 point and that the Frogs were going to finish shooting 29% in the second half but still win this game, what would you have said to them?
I would be very surprised and think it's like the Twilight Zone or something because definitely, with you telling me those facts right there with Mike Miles, who's definitely been having a great year, to only have 1 point and finish without a bucket, it's kind of really just shows how the Horned Frogs are playing this year with next man up, everybody stepping up. And I believe with the Frogs, how they played so well in the first half, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, it allowed Mike to kind of take a back seat, so to speak, and the Horned Frogs to come out with the win tonight.
And talking about that next man up, Damian Baugh finished with 24 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds on the night. Emmanuel Miller, 20 point, 10 rebound, double-double for him tonight. Baugh hit a huge couple of free throws late. Emmanuel Miller had an and one late. We're going to talk a lot about them too, but the guy I want to talk about to start all of this is Chuck O'Bannon. On his birthday, the man turned 24 today. Happy birthday to Chuck O'Bannon. He made the first 2 points of the game for TCU on a hard offensive rebound where he drew a foul in the process to put TCU, or I guess put TCU up 4-0. And then with 19 seconds left, he goes up, he pulls down another offensive rebound to help TCU burn more clock, gets the ball back out to Damian Baugh, who hits those 2 free throws after the foul. TCU goes on to win. Some very, very impressive rebounding and incredibly clutch moments for Chuck O'Bannon tonight.
Man, look here. Happy birthday to my man, Chuck O'Bannon. Great job tonight. The thing I like about Chuck tonight, he didn't score as many points, but you could see he just had the bounce. The Frogs had the energy tonight, but when you look at Chuck, what I noticed, he definitely had a bounce about him. And it could be talking about the birthday bounce, turning 24 today and everything. But he definitely played a great game, had some key block shots, had that bounce that we talked about. And pulling that offensive rebound down definitely was key and made the game for the Frogs tonight.
16 minutes for Chuck O'Bannon tonight, just 5 points, but he was 1 of 1 from the floor. His only shot was a three-pointer. He made it. It was a big moment there, too, because Texas had cut the lead, I believe, to 5. His 3 pushed that lead back out to 8. He made both of his free throws. Like you said, he had a couple blocks. He had a steal. He had 4 rebounds. He had 2 assists and only 1 turnover. That's an incredibly productive night.
A productive night, and like we always talk about with the Frogs, they have 11-man rotation if they need to. And it's next man up. And with Chuck, what I like about it is you can just see his confidence getting a lot better with his bounce and everything and with the shots. And the shot that he made, the three-pointer that kind of helped TCU to get back that surge to keep playing better basketball in the second half, it was big on his part, and we're used to seeing Chuck do those plays a lot of times.
We really are. This game had a lot of the same feel as the first game in this series this season down in Austin. TCU worked their way out to a very big lead in the first half, leading by as many as 16 points. Texas started to chip away a little bit at that, but TCU finished the first half better this time around against the Longhorns and took a 44-32 lead into that first half. When you think about what TCU's been able to do in the first half against Texas this year, they've outscored the Longhorns in the first half 84-61. They're getting out to incredibly good starts. We'll get to the second half in a second, but what has led to those good starts for TCU?
Just the energy. The guys are coming out, and you just see, of course, the crowd here at home. The surge from the crowd, the electrifying crowd. Just you see the guys just playing, like Coach Tubbs used to always say, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And you see that from each man on the floor. So that starts off, and then the defensive intensity, the pressure, picking up, and then the transition buckets as well has helped TCU out to get off to great starts. And we also know that TCU was out rebounding Texas in the first half, dominating them on the glass. And that also helped them to get out to a big lead in the first half.
A 23-8 rebounding margin in favor of the Horned Frogs in the first half. At one point, I looked down and they were winning the rebounding margin 13-2. They were exactly, you hit the nail on the head. They were dominant defensively on the glass, and that's something we talked about that they haven't been doing consistently enough. And against a defensive front court that's very athletic for Texas, but not as big as maybe some of the other front courts you see across the Big 12, Xavier Cork and Eddie Lampkin were able to get in there and get into the mix. But once again, Emmanuel Miller led the way, out-athleting guys to the ball a lot of the time.
The physicality, I always talk about that. I like how Jacoby Coles has been more physical. Mm-hmm. And as you talk about with Emmanuel Miller, he was just going up over a lot of guys tonight on the Texas team and just out-muscling them and just out-rebounding them for balls on the offense and defensive end.
It was a team effort from a rebounding perspective. You have Emmanuel Miller, who led the team with 10. Then you had 5 Horned Frogs with 5 rebounds tonight. The list is pretty impressive, too. Mike Miles, 5 rebounds. Damian Ball, 5 rebounds. Xavier Cork, Micah Peavy, Eddie Lampkin. That's 2 centers, a forward, and 2 guards that were crashing the boards, all pulling down 5 rebounds tonight.
It just shows how we always talk about, again, I just love talking about just how the next man up and how TCU plays as a team. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that this is going to help them in the postseason, going into the last game of the season with Oklahoma, then going into the conference tournament in Kansas City. TCU is fine-tuning their knives, and they're going to get ready to make a deep run in the postseason.
They're sharpening up. They're getting healthy at the right time. Everybody played tonight except for Souleymane Doumbia, who remains out in concussion protocol, but Eddie Lampkin came back, gave them productive minutes. Rondell Walker came back, gave them a couple productive minutes as well. When you think about this first half as TCU was kind of building this lead, they got out to 18-10 at one point earlier in the first half, and then you see Texas go on a run. They go on I believe it's a 12-5 run. They get within 1 score of the Horned Frogs, but every time Texas started to do that, get any kind of momentum, string a couple of shots together, TCU always found a way to respond. Micah Peavy was very big in that moment for the Horned Frogs. He hit 2 threes in the first half, the second of which put them back up by 2 possessions, and then he capped what was a 9-2 run to get them closer to halftime that pushed TCU's lead to double digits for the first time at 34-24. When you think about what Micah Peavy has done, and we've talked about it time and time again on this show, not just defensively, we know what elite defensive abilities he's got, but offensively, he's developed so much, and we saw that in pretty much every aspect of his game tonight.
And what we can see with Micah Peavy that's helped him out a lot is what we talk about is Damian Ball. Damian Ball is being a floor general, and when he's breaking down, getting inside the paint, the defense has to collapse, and he's making almost perfect passes out, and he made those 2 passes out to Michael Peavy for threes, and it's almost like you have to shoot this because the offense is running just the right way. So kicking those balls out, kicking those passes out, he's wide open, and it's in rhythm shots. And I feel like that's when Michael Peavy is at his best and a better three-point shooter when he's taking in-rhythm shot three-pointers. And he also does a lot of the intangibles that we always talk about. He does things that doesn't show up in the stat sheet, and that's what makes him unique for the Frogs.
And one of those things he did tonight was play incredibly tough defense from 1, 2, 3, all the way down to the 4 for Texas tonight. You look at Texas's scoring effort across the board. Sir'Jabari Rice led the Longhorns with 16 points tonight, but it took him 16 shots to do it. Tyrese Hunter, who we talked about pregame, had a pretty good night, 5 of 10 for 15 points, but that's still, you got to pick and choose your poison. So he got his, Rice got his, but, you're looking at Timmy Allen, 6 points. That's well below his average. You're talking about Marcus Carr, 10 points, but it took him 16 shots to do it. I was so impressed. Even when the offense in the second half started to wane for TCU, they were really laboring on that side of the court. That never translated to bad defense. They were never a step slow. They never got frustrated and let that bleed over. Every time down the court defensively, they gave Texas everything they could handle. And at the end of the day, the Longhorns finished shooting just 39% from the floor for the game.
When we talk about the Frogs and we talk about their defense ability, if we talk about good teams going into great teams, and the Frogs in the second half didn't shoot the ball well, didn't have a good percentage really shooting, but as you said, it didn't bleed over into their defense, and their defense stayed strong. And this is why they was able to pull out the win. And you're going to have games like this sometimes, JP, where your offense may be clicking the first half, and in the second half, you may not be able to shoot the ball as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what TCU did a good job of is they played great defense, grabbed the rebounds, and still attacked the basket and got to the free throw line and made free throws.
They absolutely did. We're going to talk about some of those important free throws when we come back as the Frogs Today post-game show continues right after this break.
Dave's Hot Chicken is a cult favorite and now has 2 locations in Fort Worth, Bryant Irvin Road on I-20 and Berry Street at TCU, both owned and operated by Horned Frogs. Mention the Frogs Today show and get 10% off anytime and order online at daveshotchicken.com.
At Higginbotham, we put people first. So we simply start by listening to you. Whether you're searching for customized insurance, HR, or financial solutions to protect your home, car, health, business, or employees, our specialists are here to serve you, the people you care about, and your success. Higginbotham. Insurance, HR, and financial services. Inspired by you.
For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at frogstoday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on frogstoday.com.
Say hello to the water of tomorrow. Richard's Rainwater. Richard's Rainwater is 100% rain, refreshing, renewable, and the only ingredient we use in our water. Why rain? Because everyone deserves access to clean water, and rain is a 100% renewable resource available everywhere. Drink the rain. Save the planet. Shop now at richardsrainwater.com.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today post-game show. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Bingo Merriex following TCU's exciting, thrilling, heart-palpitating 75-73 win over the Texas Longhorns. Texas ranked 9 coming into this game. TCU ranked 22. You have to assume that they're going to get closer together in those rankings following a game like this.
You see a game like this where Texas lost to Baylor and then pull out that win there. And so you have to always understand that TCU is starting to play better basketball. The rankings don't always show where you're supposed to be. TCU was 14 at one time, and now they're playing at the right time. They're great basketball, putting it all together, and I think that will help TCU to come better, like in the top 15, top 10 going into postseason.
I think it will. And, we talked pregame. You mentioned specifically that this was an opportunity for a get-back game for TCU. After blowing an 18-point lead down in Austin, we thought that it could have gone the same way. And in the start of the second half, it looked like it was going to. TCU led by as many as 16 in the first half, carried a 12-point lead into the break, and then they came out after halftime, and it's like there were lids on the rim. They couldn't score baskets. They had 7 points total in the second half at the 11-15 mark of the second half, almost halfway through. They hadn't even broken the 10-point threshold yet. What changed, do you think, after halftime for the Horned Frogs, and what made it so difficult for them to score?
What made it so difficult that I would think about is the energy was so high. And a lot of times when the energy is erupting like it was in the first half, you're so high up here playing that when you take a break at the second, when you get a break at halftime, and then when you come back out, it's not that you're not playing well, but your intensity may not be as high as it was to beginning because you got to rest. So now you're having a little time to chill, relax. And when you come back out, you may be a little lethargic just because your energy was so high in the first half. This crowd was doing a great job. The student body, they showed up for the Frogs, and they kept the Frogs going in the second half. And I think that's what gave them the surge to pull it off defensively and pull the win off.
When you're playing defense on that end of the court in the second half for TCU with the students at your back, it has to almost feel like you've got a sixth man on the court right behind you, kind of willing you and urging you on. As loud as they got on that end of the court for the bulk of the second half, to the point where the officials had to stop the game, turn around and call a student out, have a little conversation. Texas was getting frustrated, I think, with some of the stuff that was going on with the students tonight, because moments later, Rodney Terry picks up a technical foul. That's how Mike Miles gets his only point of the game, is hitting one of those free throws. But every time Texas started to claw back, and they did multiple times, TCU answered not only defensively, but with some big moments on offense too. I think specifically about an and one that Emmanuel Miller had at about the 8-minute mark left to put them up 60-50. That was the last time their lead was 10. And from that point on, Texas got closer and closer and closer, and TCU managed to respond every time.
Well, I think for sure the coaches may have had an emphasis on, remember when we played at Austin, we had an 18-point lead, we lost that lead and ended up losing the game. So I'm for sure in the scouting report, that was a big emphasis about, we're going to get up early. Now make sure we hold on to this lead and finish the game out. TCU won by 2 points, but what was impressive is that they didn't give the lead up, and they was able to hold Texas off and get the win.
And they had a couple chances to give that lead up too. They were up 71-62 with just under 2 minutes remaining in this game. Marcus Carr hits a big three from the wing. TCU comes down, misses a shot. Texas gets it back, and then all of a sudden Tyrese Hunter hits a three from the other wing, and it's 71-68. And Texas calls a timeout with just under a minute left in the game, and you're thinking, here we go again. We've seen time and time again this year TCU struggle to close out games, not perform well under the pressure of the final minutes. But tonight, offensive rebound from Chuck O'Bannon, 2 clutch free throws from Damian Baugh, and then a breakaway dunk from Emmanuel Miller to put an exclamation point on this victory.
It has to be really rewarding for the Frogs to see how they pull this game out. And I like how they're evolving into just a great team. The Frogs have always been a good team, but going into the postseason, like we talk about, moving that level up, moving that ladder just to be a little bit better and to be great and pull these type games out, because it's not always going to be pretty.
Yeah.
And so to be able to close this game out, that's how you become great teams, and that's how you make deep runs in the postseason.
Again, TCU shoots under 30% from the floor in the second half. Mike Miles does not have a basket from the floor all night long, and TCU finds a way to overcome some adversity. They obviously have huge games from Baugh and Miller, who combined for 44 points, and they come away with the victory. Here's an interesting fact now that I'm looking at the score sheet, because I was looking this up as the game was going along. So Mike Miles, this is his third game without a made field goal in his career. We're not counting the Mississippi State game earlier this year because he went down with that knee injury so early on. But every time, so this is once his freshman year against Iowa State in January, he went 0 for 8. Last year in, I believe it was February, against Kansas, he went 0 for 8. Tonight, in March, 0 for 8. I know that there's nothing deeper meaning about that, but that's just a really interesting fact that in all 3 times he's gone 0 for from the floor, it's been 0 for 8.
It's been 0 for, but you can also think about how it has to be a little fatigue, just because the fact that he has not played a lot. And then also you can just think, you may not credit it to fatigue and just maybe credit it to it's just one of those nights.
Sure.
And Mike is definitely a great player, and he's going to continue to play great. And so when you set a bar so high, a lot of times when you don't have the same expectations for a game, maybe, and this is what sports is about.
Yeah.
But we know down the stretch, Mike will definitely come back and be even better.
Yeah, he absolutely will. And I think there are 2 things that to note about his performance tonight, too. First of all, a lot of times when leading scorers and guys who maybe shoot the ball more just on a regular basis get into a slump like this, they keep shooting and keep shooting and keep shooting, and that eventually digs your team into a hole. Mike avoided that temptation tonight. He played tough defense. He rebounded well, and he understood, hey, it's not my night, but Damian's going, Emmanuel's going. I'm going to work to get them the ball. I'm going to try and pull defenders away. And Texas did a great job defending him. They were fronting him all the way out to half court most of the night. They were throwing double teams at him every time TCU tried to screen for him when he had the basketball. And he made smart plays pretty much every time he had the ball. He had a couple turnovers. That's going to happen against a defensive team like Texas. But realistically, in spite of the shooting effort, he still had a good, productive game for the Frogs.
Well, you said he went 0 for 8 tonight from the field. And Mike's IQ is great. It's beyond, you see him, and when he plays on the floor, cutting without the basketball, getting other guys involved. He does a great job of that. I believe what he realized tonight is everybody else had it going early.
Yeah. Yes.
And so with that, sometimes in being a great player, you can become complacent just because you're kind of watching, because you had everybody doing so well. And so you credit it to him for noticing that and being able to still stay involved, still be great on defensive end. And, like we said, he'll be back next game coming into the postseason, and he will get those shots to fall.
He will get those shots to fall. We've seen it from him. We've seen these little bit mini slumps, if you want to call them that, and he gets right back on that horse and is the scorer that TCU needs, because they will need Mike Miles down this stretch as we get into tournament time. There's no doubt about it. Let's turn over, though, and let's talk a little bit about this defensive effort for the Horned Frogs, because we've mentioned it a couple times now. We've talked about Texas's stats, but I want to start with the defensive effort on Timmy Allen. 6 points tonight, 2 of 5 from the floor, only 4 rebounds. He ended up with 4 personal fouls and 3 turnovers as well. What did you notice about TCU's defense on Allen that made them so successful?
What we talked about in the pregame, we talked about making him uncomfortable, right? And he hit a turnaround shot early, and it was a tough shot. And, I was thinking like, this could be a long night because it was a tough shot. But you have to think he makes those tough shots down the stretch. What he does well is he gets easy buckets early and often, and then so those tough shots go in more down the stretch. But TCU did a great job of crowding him, making him uncomfortable, making him off balance in his shots. And you said he was frustrated, had a few fouls, 4 fouls, and almost fouled out of the game. And with that, TCU was able to shut him down tonight.
They absolutely were. 2 guys that I noticed having a really good defensive effort against him, Emmanuel Miller. Obviously, they match up together at the 4. Miller, when you put his whole game into perspective, you talk about his double-double, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and the defensive effort against Timmy Allen. This is arguably one of Miller's most complete games as a Horned Frog. But there were a lot of times, too, we've talked often about TCU being a positionless defense and switching consistently over and over again. There were 4 or 5 times where I saw Damian Baugh on Tim Allen, and he's given up a couple inches and quite a few pounds, and he was still making life difficult, getting in his face, being physical, doing it pretty much cleanly. He only had 2 fouls on the night, and really just making life hard.
Making life hard for him. And what you realize also in Austin, he had it going and he wasn't uncomfortable. So when Damian Ball got on him in Austin, he was able to shoot those turnaround jump shots and make tough shots over Damian Ball, because Damian Ball is definitely one of our best defenders. But tonight, as we said, he was uncomfortable. TCU was physical with him early. We talk about Emmanuel Miller. He does a lot of the dirty work as well, too.
Yes.
But it gets overlooked a lot of times because we see him rebounding, because we see him scoring the ball as well. But just like Michael Peavy, Emmanuel Miller does a lot of the intangibles as well, too.
He really does. I'll say this. Neither team reached our scoring expectations in our pregame predictions. We're off. One of these days we're going to get one. One of these days. Not today, though. But I'll say this. When you think about this game, you're going to look at the big stats. You're going to see Damian Ball. You're going to see Emmanuel Miller, 44 points combined. Micah Peavy with 8 points on 3 of 6 shooting. Jacoby Coles with 8 points on 4 of 7 shooting. This is 8 games in a row where he's shooting over 55% from the floor. That's so impressive, especially when you consider the fact that he's playing a lot more of the 5, still playing some of the 4, and still putting up shots from 3.
Jacoby Coles, what I like about him is just a really utility guy for the Frogs. Sometimes he may play 20 minutes. Sometimes he may play 12 or less minutes. But you're going to get the same effort from him, and that's what I'm like. Always poised, always a team guy. Put the team first. And it shows in his game because he's playing better, playing on the offensive end, stretching the floor, getting big rebounds, making big free throws. He also played a complete game tonight.
He did, the Horned Frogs did, and they come away with the 75-73 victory. We're going to continue the postgame show here at Frogs Today and FrogsToday.com right after we take this quick break.
For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at FrogsToday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on FrogsToday.com.
Texas-based Happy Water offers the best-tasting, sugar-free kids drink ever made. Happy Water comes in 4 delicious flavors that you can find at local retailers and on Amazon. Each pouch contains 0 grams of sugar, 0 calories, and 0% juice. Head to happydrinks.com for more information and to purchase Happy Water. That's HAPIdrinks.com. Live happy, be happy, drink happy.
Simply the best barbecue in Fort Worth. Dine in, catering, or drive-through. 2900 Montgomery, just off I-30. Remember, the best barbecue in Fort Worth is at Railhead Smokehouse. Say hello to the water of tomorrow. Richard's Rainwater. Richard's Rainwater is 100% rain, refreshing, renewable, and the only ingredient we use in our water. Why rain? Because everyone deserves access to clean water, and rain is a 100% renewable resource available everywhere. Drink the rain. Save the planet. Shop now at richardsrainwater.com.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today postgame show. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Bingo Merriex. We've got dancing interns behind the camera. Everybody's hyped up after this big win, 75-73. The Frogs beat the Longhorns. Bingo, we were talking during the break about Tony Benford and some of his expectations and the coaching staff's expectations for TCU. They hit a couple of those tonight. They missed on a couple more. Give me some insight into Coach Benford's thinking.
What he really likes about him, what they always preach as far as on the defensive end, is hold our opponents under 40% on the field goals overall. Mm-hmm. I believe they did that tonight. I think Texas shot 39%, right around there. And so that was good. And we talked about how the Horned Frogs played great defense. And also they want to talk about the three-point shooting, to hold them to 5. But Texas shot over that, so they missed the mark on that. But they want to be plus 10 on the rebound end. The Horned Frogs dominated the glass tonight, and they did a great job. And it showed in the first half for sure just how dominant they were, and it was definitely leading to the offensive rebound, the defensive rebound, just the rebounding overall.
Plus 18 on the boards tonight, 46-28 is the rebounding effort by TCU there. You know, I looked down at one point in the second half. TCU dominated 23-8 in the first half on the boards. About halfway through, 8 minutes left in the second half, Texas was actually winning the rebounding battle in the second half, and TCU closed out that really well. Finished winning on the boards 23-20 in the second half. So that goes to show the effort that they put forth in those final 8-ish minutes of this game to keep Texas from completing a comeback, hold them at bay, and eventually pull out the win.
And just to piggyback off what you were saying, JP, a lot of times with that, when teams are shooting cold, as the Horned Frogs were doing tonight, teams they come back. You get on a run and you're able to come back. But the Frogs had that never give up as far as on defense, and they just stayed together. And the rebounding overall, it just helped them out and just showed just the dominance, right? And so just in that, like Texas was not able to take the lead as they did in Austin when they came back from that 18-point deficit.
It's true. Now, Texas has some questions to ask. Rodney Terry's got to figure some things out for the Longhorns. This is the 4th consecutive road loss for the Longhorns in conference play. They dropped to 4-4 in their last 8 games, 22-8 now on the season, 11-6 in conference play. So, just one day after the possibility of finishing with a regular season championship, they're starting to slide a little bit. And if you're a Longhorns fan at this point, you have to start asking some questions about the viability of this team long-term in the tournament.
I think with the Jayhawks tonight, they were TCU Horned Frogs fans because they did not want to share that championship with Texas. And you also do have to ask these questions if you're Texas, because going into the postseason, losing 4 road games in a row, a lot of times in this tournament, you're going to be on the road and you may not have the crowd behind you. So what they're going to have to do coming into this conference tournament is have a team meeting, get things together, because they're still a great team.
Yes.
But when you get into postseason, being a great team, you still have to get these wins because it's one and done in the postseason.
It absolutely is. And when you talk about the Big 12 tournament specifically, we know that's always a Kansas home game. Doesn't matter who the two teams are on the court, it's rock chalk all the way. And so Texas does have to figure out how to handle some of that fan adversity like you were talking about. But speaking of fan adversity, TCU does have one more regular season game. They go on the road to Norman, Oklahoma this Saturday to play the Sooners at 2 p.m. Oklahoma sits last in the Big 12 in the conference, but we've talked about them before on the show. They're still a dangerous team. They've knocked off Alabama. They recently went up to Ames and beat Iowa State by 11 points, 61-50. A great defensive effort from the Sooners in that game. And we know, because we've talked about it all year, there is not a single team in the Big 12 conferences that's going to lay down and roll over.
Not going to lay down and roll over. And just because they're at one point in time, Oklahoma was having aspirations to maybe even be on the bubble team and go to the tournament. But now coming into the last game of the season, right before the postseason, Oklahoma sits in last place. So what TCU needs to do is go to Oklahoma, keep the same energy that they had in the first half, and jump on Oklahoma early, because you can definitely believe that Oklahoma is going to come out and they're going to want to do the same thing that the Frogs did and have a great game for their fans in this last home game.
They are. And, this is a thing, too, that we talked about a little bit on the pregame show. We talked about it postgame after Kansas as well, is there's a lot of seeding still at stake, not only in the Big 12 conference, but in the NCAA tournament as well. I've seen TCU projected as low as a 7 seed. Or as late as yesterday. And so you start to think about a percentage chance of advancing beyond the round of 32, which is where TCU's season ended last year. That starts to drop dramatically once you get past the 5th, 6th seed area. You're talking about a 5th seed advancing about 65% of the time. A 7th seed advances about 55% of the time. And when you get lower than that, it's even worse for you. And so TCU really has to close out on a strong note here to end the season against Oklahoma, so that they have a little bit more momentum heading up to Kansas City. Maybe they can put on a run, get up into that 4 seed range where your percentage of advancing to the Sweet 16 starts to be around 75, 76%, which is obviously not going to just get you there, but it's nice to have better odds.
Well, with TCU, they've been overcoming the odds all season this year. And just like in tonight's game against Texas, they hadn't had a great percentage in winning against Texas, and then Texas coming here to play as well against TCU. So I like my chances with TCU. Of course, you want to get the highest seed possible. But going forward, the Frogs are playing better basketball. Guys are getting healthy. So they need to go in with the mentality that whatever seed we get, we're going to overcome those odds that the percentage may have in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. And the good thing about tonight's win is that it keeps them out of the first day of the Big 12 tournament. They were sitting in that 6-ish, maybe even 7-ish seed spot, but with the win tonight, they get to 9-8, which guarantees them at least a 500 record in conference play, which is very impressive. And that puts them at 5th currently in the conference standings, which means that they're not going to be playing on day one. That gives you an extra day to work on some things, an extra day to rest. We've talked about them trying to get healthy for the last couple of weeks now. That's just another opportunity for TCU to really be clicking on all gears as they enter tournament time.
You're right, JP, and rest is definitely important, because you're about to come through a stretch now where you're going to have one day, maybe 2 days off, because you're going to be playing a lot of basketball. And so with this, it's just important to do your work early. So with the Frogs winning tonight, they putting themselves in a great position. So going into the conference tournament, we hope that they can come and everybody be healthy, because a lot of times with players, a lot of players don't be at 100%, but sometimes a player 75 to 80% is better than a lot of guys 100% maybe on other teams, because this is how guys are playing. Guys want to be on the floor, and they want to help their team out. So getting that extra rest, being prepared, hydrated, and all those things. I know Gary Christopher, he'll have them ready for sure.
Gary Christopher, the two things that I know about him, he's going to have them running, and he's not going to let them DoorDash anything. Right. And so if you combine those two things, the Frogs are going to continue to be in great shape. But the rest of the way, this is really kind of the calm before the storm now. They got one more game in the next 6 days, and then it's a dead sprint to hopefully what could be, a national championship run for these Horned Frogs. When they're playing at their best, we know that they've got that in them. And now is the time, March 1st. It's time to prove it.
Like you always say, you told me in the pregame, just one game at a time. And that's what they have to do. They have to take it one game at a time. But they know that the goal that they've been having it since the beginning of the season. They know that they're a national championship team and that they can compete for a national championship. That's the way they feel. They feel like they got slotted a little bit last year. We said we're not going to talk about that Arizona game. But moving forward, we know that the Horned Frogs are getting ready. Coach Dixon is getting the team ready, and the coaching staff is doing a great job as far as the scouting. So we know they'll be ready for the conference. The last game being Oklahoma. conference tournament and postseason play.
You know, they might have another shot at the Arizona Wildcats before it's all said and done. They've got a pretty good season going over there in the Pac-12 as well. But that's going to do it for us here on the Frogs Today post-game show following TCU's 75-73 win over the Texas Longhorns. This is actually going to be the last post-game show of the season for you guys. Bingo Merriex, it's been a pleasure, my guy, sitting alongside you breaking down the Horned Frogs.
I really enjoyed it, and thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun doing this with you. And what better way to go out with the last game and having my Frogs Today swag on? Little swag on, you know. I appreciate my man Mark hooking me up a little bit, and it's been a lot of fun. And hopefully we can run it back and do it again.
Let's run it back next year. But until then, you can follow us still creating some content and writing about the Horned Frogs shooting hoops over at frogstoday.com. Make sure you're subscribed because no one else covers the Horned Frogs better than we do at Frogs Today. And while you're at it, go over to the YouTube channel. You might be watching this show right there, right now. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave us a comment underneath it as well. Tell Bingo how good he looks in his Frogs Today vest. For Bingo Merriex, for the rest of the Frogs Today staff, I'm Jamie Plunkett, and we'll see you in Kansas City maybe.